I'm Mike and I'm an addict.
Mike.
Yeah. Grateful to be here. I got asked to speak earlier today due to some life-on-life term circumstances with another member of the program. But, it's one thing my sponsor taught me I don't know, it's something I learned very early on from my sponsors to not refuse any reasonable NA request. And one of the cool things that does is it keeps you accountable, because I was kind of in a spot today where I didn't want to go to a meeting and didn't want to see a bunch of people, and here I am. So, you can call it higher power stuff or whatever you want, It's just kind of cool how that stuff works out. With my story, I think that in NA, everybody's stories are pretty similar. I think it's kind of like the same movie directed by different people. It's something I say a lot, but it's like, some people it's like some cheesy romance flick where there's like a lot of bad relationships and stuff like that. Some people it's like a Wachowski brothers movie where there's a lot of gun violence and action, and some people it's like a Tarantino movie where you don't know what the fuck's going on until the very end, But that's the way I like to do it is just from the beginning, how I got here, all that good stuff. Because I've heard people jump around, and like I said, it's like confusing as all hell. But so when I was younger, my parents were. I have been told I have a pretty textbook setup to be an addict, or I had a therapist tell me I had a textbook setup to be a sociopath, which is cool that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, you're allowed to laugh at that. It's cool. Because I had a heart attack when she told me that, because I was like, oh shit, I might kill people someday, But I haven't, so. But no, my parents were divorced. I was never old enough to see them together. And that was just normal for me, it's not like I hold this huge resentment against it because I never saw them together. It's not like they were happy and whatever. But they both got remarried. I don't know, it was just the whole reason I bring up the divorce thing. When I was young, they were never together, and my parents' custody agreement was we switched off every other day. I have a biological sister, so it was Monday at mom's, Tuesday at dad's, Wednesday at mom's, whatever. And the only reason I bring that up is because I don't remember a time in my life where I felt normal, because at that early age, that was the big thing that made me different from everybody. It's like elementary school. Most people, you get on a bus, you go to school, you get on the bus, you go home, whatever. For me, it was always a nightmare figuring out buses to get on, and I'm in a different place all the time, and, people always asking questions, and I didn't know that was normal to me. I thought it was weird that people had parents that were together. I was like, your parents live in the same house? That's weird, So my dad remarried very young. I was very young. I shouldn't say he remarried very young. But his second wife had three sons, which were my three stepbrothers. And then my mom eventually got remarried, and I got a stepbrother and a stepsister out of that. So at one point I had 5 step-siblings. I have my biological sister, and then I have a half-brother who's 13 years younger than me, or 14 years younger than me. So growing up, it was a lot of turmoil in both houses. I grew up both sides, two very drug-friendly cultures. On my dad's side, I grew up redneck hunting family. It was everything. I was allowed to, life lessons from the men in my family on my dad's side, where I was allowed to have 2 emotions. I was allowed to be happy, and I was allowed to be mad. That was it. Anything else, you didn't talk about it. Once I got old enough, it was here, self-medicate. You can talk to your therapist, Mr. Jack Daniels, or, whoever. That's just kind of how I grew up, and that was, again, something that was very normal to me. On my mom's side, she's been a bartender for 30 years. I grew up around a lot of biker dudes, a lot of guys in clubs and stuff like that. So, like I said, just 2 very drug-friendly cultures. So I was around drugs at a very young age, all the time. And I don't mean just I think nowadays most kids grow up seeing alcohol at a very young age, but I mean I was around drugs at a young age, So, and again, these were all things that seemed normal to me, but it was I'd talk about that stuff at school, and people are like, what the hell? What? And it just, I never really felt like I fit in or whatever. So at a very young age, I started doing things to help me fit in with people. I started playing sports very young. I got in a band really soon. And I just started doing stuff like that initially just to have ways to fit in with people. Because the more I could not talk about like how stuff was at home or whatever, like, anything that didn't deal with me that could make me fit in with somebody else was awesome, So, I grew up like, my dad was very physically and emotionally abusive. My stepmom and stepdad were both very emotionally abusive. My 3 stepbrothers, actually all 4 of my stepbrothers, very manipulative, physically abusive, this whole thing, believe it or not, I grew up really tiny, so I got picked on and got my ass whooped a lot when I was younger. So very quickly that stuff to fit in, it very quickly became like my reason to not deal with stuff at home, which then as the years go on, I get into middle school and stuff like that. Middle school, I got bullied a lot too, so it was like home life sucked, school life sucked. I dug even deeper into all of that, all the outside stuff. Like it was a way to not be at home. It eventually became a way to not deal with me or like my feelings or like reality, basically. Because if I could keep myself busy with music or sports or this or that, whatever, I didn't have to focus on, whatever. So it was, I want to say when I was like 12 or 13 is when I started using. And it was just a matter of time, like I said, the way I grew up. So I started using. Then my freshman year of high school, a lot of stuff happened. I injured myself and couldn't play sports anymore, and that ended a 13-year soccer career, so that was a big deal to me then. Both of my parents got divorced from their second marriages, so I didn't live in my own house for 6 months. That was a big deal to me. I didn't think it was at the time because, like I said, my parents moved a lot, so it was like a lot of turmoil when I was younger. So like I said, at the time it was so normal to me. And like I said, I always thought people were weird that lived in one house and had both of their parents in one house and all that. Like that was very odd to me. And now it's just rare to see people that have parents that are still together. So all that stuff happened, and like in hindsight, I see that like, it's my freshman year of high school. It's like part of your formative years as an adult and all this, and all of this crazy shit was going on. Sports got taken away from me. I started doing everything I could to stay at school as long as I could. I hated school, but I hated being home a lot more. So I started doing that stuff, started using more often. My junior and senior year of high school, I worked 40 hours and did school and did extracurriculars and all that. I was only home for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, and that was to sleep. It was literally wake up, out the door, at school all day doing extracurricular stuff, working 2 jobs till 1 in the morning, coming home, going to sleep, waking up at 6 in the morning, just nonstop, Sunday through Saturday. Which, again, just kind of like reinforced using and stuff like that, because then it became, I started to think like I was an adult and be like, oh, well, I'm so stressed from work and all this stuff, I just need to take the edge off or this or that, whatever. So basically I get to my senior year of high school, just burnt out. I just wanted to get the hell away from everything. My home life didn't get, so after my parents got divorced, my dad is also an addict. And he gave me this big thing about how like, things were going to be different now that his second wife was out of the picture, and we were going to move into this house together, and it was going to be just me and him, and this and and this and that. And to me, that sounded awesome because I had no real male like role models growing up. Like my dad, was my dad, and I promise I'm applying a lot of spiritual principles to not say other things about him, because he is who he is, and there's nothing I can do about that. My stepdad was, an alcoholic and stuff like that, and actually ended up cheating on my mom while I was home and awake. Like, that was a weird situation. One thing I kind of glazed over, too, is on my mom's side, her second husband's son was like the closest thing I had to a male role model growing up, and he taught me very early on how to manipulate people and how to get really good at stealing and stuff like that, to the point where I was like stealing for the rush of it. Like, I didn't steal shit that I needed or anything like that. I just did it to do it, and that was in like middle school and stuff like that. And but I don't know, it was just like I got a lot of tools when I was younger to not cope with things, or like to not have to actually process emotions, and I could just set them to the side or bury them and all that. So like I said, then my dad, said it's going to be different, this and that. So obviously I was stoked, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to have a dad. And I moved in, didn't change at all. The only thing that changed, she didn't hate me anymore because my mom said she got to the point where she was like, you'll be in jail faster than you can think about it. And his response was, I'll call the cops for you. But then he never hit me again. So, but so then like that was just super toxic. And like halfway or 3/4 of the way through my junior year, I basically just packed up all my shit in the middle of the night and moved in with my mom. So I get to my like graduating high school. And I really tried my hardest to not graduate, and I don't know how I did. But I actually had to walk and all that stuff. Like, I remember trying not to walk at my graduation, because that's like your senior year, the first thing they threaten you with, oh, we'll take away, you won't be able to walk at graduation. I was like, fucking sweet, let's go. And then my mom called my dean and was like, no, don't do that. Do something else to him to punish him. So, whatever. But so I walked my graduation 6 days later, packed up my car, moved out to California because I wanted to get the fuck away from Illinois, and I thought that would make everything better. Being away from all those toxic people and all that stuff. It's something that our literature talks about. We change people, places, things, whatever, thinking that that's going to be the solution. So that's what I did. I moved out west. I lived with my grandma and had a room with her. And I was unsupervised, making money, and didn't have shit to do. I went from doing something 24/7 to now I'm just making money and I have all this free time. I was a manager at an arcade, not a hard job to keep, a really easy job to do high. So that's all I did. That was when using really took off, because I didn't have all my school shit to keep me busy and all that. I was in a band and stuff like that, and that was just nonstop. 24/7. I wouldn't show up for weeks at a time at my grandma's. I had a room to sleep in, chose to live in my car for weeks at a time. I still don't have an answer to why that sounded good. But I just did that, and that it was just, the more I did it, the more I had to use, the harder I had to use, this and that, the more connections I made, and it was just a big spiral. And then I met a girl. Yeah. So that was like my first kind of like, I thought I had a problem thing, because I could stop for like a couple days at a time, so I thought I was good. Like if my bosses were like, dude, you've been really like in rough shape at work, I'd like show up in better shape for a couple days, and then they'd get off my case and I'd be back to the races. But so then I met this chick, and she didn't use at all. She was also like 4 or 5 years younger than me. Which was a problem because I was only 19. So, but that was like I didn't think about like morals or like anything like that. I just wanted what I wanted. So, and I had never had a serious relationship. Like high school was a joke. I used girls like, if I just wanted what I wanted, I'll just leave it at that, because there's a lot of girls here. But so I, met this chick, and she was kind of my first eye opener to like, maybe there might be something wrong here. And then the really like eye opener was I went home to visit my mom because my mom is like the only close family member I'm really close with, and literally one of the reasons I'm alive today. But I went home to visit her, and I was like cooking or something like that, and I didn't think anything of it, but obviously I'm not getting blasted while my mom's home. And I was like trying to help her cook or something like that, and she realized like my hands were shaking and I couldn't I was trying to cut chicken, couldn't. Like, it was just a fucking effort. Like, I was like sweating from it. And I just remember the look of disappointment on her face, and she was just like, are you seriously that bad right now? And that just, it's like the one person I kind of gave a shit about. And that look of disappointment, I don't think I'll ever fucking forget that. That's still burned into my head. Like, I've got a shit memory, but that is one thing I will never forget. So I went home and started to kind of formulate a game plan. Didn't stop using, just thought about how I could maybe clean it up a little bit. So I decided, there's a part in our literature that says our best thinking got us in these seats. And one of the tools I use today in my recovery is saying things out loud, even if I'm by myself, because in your head, your voice sounds awesome and sounds like a genius. And the reason I say all that before I say this idea is because my best thinking at this time, this was like months of hard work and like sitting at the board with the tacks and the yarn, is I was going to move away from California. I was going to go back to Illinois, and to get away from partying and all that, my solution was going to college. You're allowed to laugh at that. That was, like I said, I had never said it out loud. It was just an idea I rolled with, and it sounded fucking great. And that did not last that long. I went to school, and it was like for the relationship, I was getting clean for her, and I was going to get a degree so I could get a job and we could start a life and this and that, which was all a great idea for being 19 and having like zero life skills. I knew how to work. That was one thing. Like I maintained full-time employment while still in high school. So that was one thing that was like I could do. But so I went to school, and it was like a long-distance relationship, man. Like, literature talks about how hard relationships are for addicts, and that was like my first real taste of that. That was my first serious relationship, so I was fucking head over heels for this chick. And, the more I didn't talk to her, because it was a distance relationship, like it started out like I went out like once to a party, and I was like, it's not that bad, it's just one day, and then it like kind of made me feel bad, so I didn't talk to her for a little bit, and then that I was feeling bad, so then I went out to drink for that, and then it made me feel more bad, which made me use more, and you can see where that cycle goes. So I basically got to watch myself light that relationship on fire until it got to the point where she was like, all right, I know you're partying again and this and that, whatever. So that came to a close, and that really fucked me up. That was like hit a really hard spiritual bottom when I was in college. I was only there for a year, and that was bad. That was a rough time. I was not really using hard drugs at the time, and a real eye opener for me, like in hindsight, is about halfway through the year I tried to stop using, and I just quit everything cold turkey. My main thing was alcohol at that time. And I didn't know at the time, but you can die from doing that shit. Like just stopping alcohol use cold turkey. I didn't know that, but I quit using everything and quit smoking all cold turkey. And I would like wake up convulsing and like puking on myself and shitting on myself and all that. And I was just like telling myself that like I was just sick. Like flu sick, not like diseased sick. I was like, yeah, I'll get over it. Like that's how sick I was back then. And like a real eye-opener for me was like waking up and like my friends were like checking my arms and shit like that. And to me, like I wasn't a drug addict. Like I wasn't, some junkie or something like that. Like what the fuck are you guys doing checking my arms? You have no right to be this concerned for me, But so I went through there, ended up dropping out of school. I finished out the year with fucking horrible grades. And then I moved in with my mom. And again, it just became, I worked. I didn't have shit to do with that. I made money. I just got high all the time. There's not much to that, I just worked and got high. I just kind of existed. And it just went further and further into this spiral of like, I just hated everyone. I hated humans. I hated myself. Just everybody. Like I was literally just like, I would find reasons to hate people. Because that's just what I was comfortable with, and that's what I was good at. I was like, this guy with this fucking yellow shirt, this fucking guy, I hope he gets in a car accident or some shit. Like, I hated people. Oh, it was that bad. I would literally say that to my close friends. I'd be like, this fucking guy, whatever. And that's when I was that dude who was like, somebody would cut me off, and I would like be ready to pull him out of their car on the side of the highway and beat the fuck out of him for no reason. I actually almost pulled the dude out of his car because I cut him off and he gave me the finger. Yeah, that's how bad I was. That's how much I hated people back then. And it just got to the point, when I moved back home, I met another girl, which I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. But that ended up being a 4.5-year example of why relationships, when you're using, while you're new to the program, whatever, are a horrible idea. Super toxic. It was two sick people trying to fix each other. This is somebody who, she's not an addict, but like a lot of mental health stuff that she just refused to get help with at the time. And that was like on and off, whatever. There was this point where we had broken up, and then I was working this job that was like cutting my hours, so I was starting to get into debt, and everything just seemed like it was like that was it. I was like, this is where it's becoming to be too much. I can't deal with this shit anymore. And I remembered that I had an old coworker that had told me he would front me like a certain amount of this one drug because he knew I liked to party. He's like, oh, this will help you party for longer. And I was like, I certainly don't have a problem with that, but I will absolutely try it. But I hadn't up to that point because, like, in my later days of using, I stayed away from really hard shit because I was afraid of how much I was going to like them. And it was weird. I wanted to die, but I was afraid of it still. And then I reached this point where I just said, fuck it, I'm done. I don't see any way out of this. That's when I really hit the bottom. Like, my last bottom. And I was like a phone call away. Like, I tell people that I was a phone call away from killing myself. And I literally picked up the phone to call him, and he said that he would even bring it to my house and shit like that. And I was planning on that was it. I was just going to fucking use it, get high. I wasn't one of those, like, people, like, I didn't plan out, like, this big, like, suicide note, whatever thing. I just wanted to be gone, I just didn't want to live anymore. I didn't see the point. And for whatever reason, I was picking up the phone to dial his number, and I broke down and started crying and shit like that, and ended up not calling him. And this job that I was at, there was this other dude there who was like, he's like a guy with long hair and glasses and a beard, and he wore T-shirts with bold print on them. So I was like, oh, you're probably a friend, because it was like bands that I liked and stuff like that. And we had seen each other every now and then, but we worked in different departments. And then just like one day I was wearing this hat for this band that's like, it just had a thing on it that's an inside joke of the band that there's like 5 people on the face of the planet who know what it means, and he happened to be one of them. And we were talking about it, and then we started talking about music. He ended up joining the band I was in and was in it for a couple months while I was still using. And, this was all kind of happening at the same time. And, like, a lot of people get turned off, myself included. When I first got here, I heard the word God a lot and got really turned off by it because I had a lot of baggage with religion. That was one of the things I tried to escape reality with in my youth. I was baptized and confirmed by choice in a church and all that good stuff, and it's just not my deal. I'm not knocking religion. If that's what is your deal, that's awesome. But like, and then you hear about the second step and the third step and all that, and I got really burned out by that, and I really thought this program was a Jesus thing. And literally this event that I'm describing right now is how I completed my third step and how I like got faith that there is something bigger than me out there that wants me to stay alive. So this dude joined my band at this time that I was like getting towards the bottom and whatever, and he was always talking about, he was always leaving practice early to go to these meetings and shit like that, and I was a fucking asshole and had no heart, so I made fun of everybody for everything. Like, I seriously would make fun of, like, disabled people to their face and shit like that, because I was just a soulless piece of shit and, didn't care. What I thought it was funny, so fuck you and how you felt. But, so he was like, there was this one time he was just like, oh, yeah, I got to go to a meeting. And I was like, what are you, fucking AA or some shit? Like, just being a straight asshole. And he's like, no, I'm an NA. I was like, fuck. Because I was, like, kind of close with him, so I, like, kind of felt bad. And I was like, shit, I just made fun of this dude for some shit that's, like, really serious to him. And I don't know why it struck me making fun of him versus anybody else. But, so my way of feeling better is I was like, all right, I'll check out a meeting with you. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go hear some. Like, I was expecting, like, the cliche, like, TV sitcom, like, hi, I'm a blah, 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 and I have a problem, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I was expecting that, like, melodramatic shit or whatever. And he was... he warned me. He's like, oh, you're going to come in here and just because you're with me. Like, I didn't know, but he was, like, super heavily involved in service. And, like, he was one of those dudes that, like, you go to any meeting in a certain area and they all knew who he was and knew that if somebody new was with them, it's probably because they fucked their life up and he's trying to help them. So he's like, they're all going to hug you. And I was like, they're not fucking touching me. Like, bring it on. I fucking hate it. I was ready to punch every single person there until I saw that there was about 35 people there. And I was like, fuck. All right, whatever. And I just gave him like shitty half hugs, which the only reason I bring up now is because I think that, I'll finish saying what it was. So I went to my first meeting and I heard the readings that we heard, and it was like somebody had dropped a ton of bricks on me. Like, it was, I can't describe how I felt at that meeting, but I remember it was like after 24 years of searching for something, that was it. That was what I had found. I had found a bunch of people who I didn't know, who I had never seen before, in an area that I didn't even live in, saying exactly what I went through on a daily basis. I heard that in those readings, and it was incredible. And the reason I brought up the half hug thing is because literally part of the reason I wanted to I left that meeting telling my good friend that some of you in here know who I'm talking about because you've heard my story before. But, I told him like, I want to go to another meeting, and he brought me to another meeting the next day. And part of the reason I left so hungry for another meeting is because, there was one guy in particular, just like, it was something about the way he hugged me, and he looked at me and he said, keep coming back. And I felt like he actually gave a shit about me. And that was the first time I had ever experienced that outside of my mom, which, like, she's kind of obligated to care about me because I'm her kid, so. But yeah, there was something about it. And now I'm a big person that, like, I really put a lot of stock into how I hug people, like, with newcomers and stuff like that. I may not jump up to hug every single fucking person that gets up in the room or whatever. I'm not going to say I love everybody, but I'm not like fucking rainbows and sunshine 24/7. That, and I know some people, like newcomers especially, see me get up and they're like, oh fuck, I'm aware of that. But no, I put a lot of stock in that because that's one of the things that kept me here, and one of the things that has kept me here this long. So I got into meetings, and people gave me suggestions and stuff like that. Like I heard all the stock shit. The only one, somehow I made it to like 2.5 months clean before I heard the suggestion to make 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't know how I missed that one for that long, but like I was like super salty for like 6 months after I heard people like, 90 meetings in 90 days, that's standard. I was like, you guys never fucking told me that, But no, I heard all the other ones, like, get phone numbers, which I got plenty of phone lists that I didn't use right off the bat. I'm just being honest. That's my story. Because I didn't like people. I didn't like talking to people. I didn't talk to my fucking mom about my feelings, or my best friend. The only person who ever knew about my feelings was my best friend since 6th grade, who talked me out of killing myself a couple times. That's the only person who knew anything about my feelings that I had, what little feelings I had back then. So, like, phone lists were scary to me. Holy shit, use them. Like, I wish I could go back. The only regret I've had in recovery is I wish I would have called more people when I first got clean. But, it is what it is. Can't do anything about that, and I'm still here, so that's what I'm grateful for. But call people, get a sponsor, which took me a pretty decent amount of time because, again, didn't fucking trust anybody. They told me, find somebody who has something that you want, and I was, the first guy I asked, he said no, and like, to anybody who's new, don't take that shit super personally because it might not be anything to do with you. The first guy I asked, sharing really honestly, he was like really brutally honest in meetings. He sounded really good. He knew a lot about the literature. He always talked about spiritual principles and all that. I asked him to sponsor me 2 months after he came back from a relapse. So that had nothing to do with me, but he was not fit for sponsorship at that time, and that's what he told me. And then I got to know him, and he says spiritual principles a lot, the guy, but he can't tell you which ones he's using, so that's also kind of a red flag. To me, I was told to stick with, another suggestion I was told to stick with the winners. The way you do that, you hang out with people inside of meetings, and you hang out with people outside of meetings. If they're the same in both scenarios, probably a safe bet. If it's 2 different fucking people, stay the fuck away from them. And I say that because that's what I did, and it saved me, like, total bullet dodge moment on a lot of people, This program is not for people who need it. It's for people who want it. That is something that is another thing that I heard very early on in my recovery, and I hold very close to me because I want this shit. Because I know before, all I wanted was to not be me, and that almost led to me killing myself. So I don't want that shit anymore, And that's another thing that helps me not relapse, man, or helps me try to not relapse, or however you want to look at it, I hear a lot of people say, like, when you relapse, you pick up where you left off and all that. And if I pick up where I left off at literally about to kill myself, so if that's where I'm picking up, I'm not going to make it very long. So that kind of shit makes me realize today, like, there's people that say using is always an option. Yes, putting a gun to my head is always an option. Like, duh. You can physically do those things, but to me, using is not an option. It is not a feasible scenario in my life in any way anymore. And not just because of, like, my service commitments or my job or whatever, just because I have shit to live for today. That's what this program has given me. It made it so I didn't obsess about getting high all the time, which is fucking incredible. And that's the only promise. is that you will make it a whole day without thinking about getting high, and you won't notice that you made it a whole day without getting high. That's some pretty incredible shit for me. Sometimes it's still a miracle today when I think about, when I really have some days. But yeah, I don't know. I just got here and, I realized that I did not know how to live my life, so I'm going to let these people teach me how. I don't fucking trust any of these people, but some of them seem like they kind of don't want to kill themselves, so I'll listen to them, because it's a starting point, and now I'm in this place where I have, there's people I've known for less than the 2 years of my recovery, and they're some of the best friends I could ever ask for, I don't talk to them for a day, and they all bug the shit out of me to make sure I'm okay, which is an awesome problem to have, because I've been in spots where I don't want to fucking talk to anybody, and they will make me talk to them and make me deal with that shit. I do service work, and like a wide range of service work too. I don't just get like one super easy service position and call it a day. Not saying that's a bad thing. Service work is service work, but I don't know. I take suggestions very seriously. I call people, I reach out to newcomers, I call my sponsor, I do step work. Like I said, I have service commitments. I do H&I probably at least once a month. I hold service positions at meetings. I'm an area chair in a struggling area. And when people ask me to do shit, like service work to me is a no-brainer. This program gave me a reason to be alive. And like the least I could do is like somebody asked me to speak. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to be here anyways. Why not? I don't know. I'm just incredibly grateful to be here. I'm really grateful for this program and what it has done for me. Because like I said, the only problem is the freedom from active addiction. But when you stop getting high every day, you have a lot of time to do some positive shit with your life. And that's what I've chosen. That's what I've chosen to do with it. So I don't know. I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm grateful for all the amazing friends I've made in this program. A lot of them are here tonight, as you can probably tell. We're all a really loud bunch. I just can't. I used to hate the people that like sold NA, that would talk about all the glittery cliches and all that bullshit, and I'm totally one of those guys now. I do it all the fucking time to even people that aren't in the program. They ask for advice on life, and I'm like, well, you're powerless over other people, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, dude, fuck you. They're like, like my non-addict coworkers get so mad when I say that shit to them, and it's awesome. I love giving people recovery advice, and they don't even realize it, and they're like, oh, that's some really deep shit. And I'm like, I don't know, it's just funny to me, because like it's like these people I hear them talking about, oh, like they're either a fucking junkie, blah blah blah, and then I throw some NA at them, and like don't let them know, because they don't know. My coworkers just know that I do service work with recovering drug addicts. They don't know that I am one as well. They don't need to. That's none of their fucking business. I'm just saying, like, sometimes I gotta leave work early to do a service commitment. All they need to know is that I'm doing service work. It's great, But it's funny when I hear them say that shit, and then I'll give them NA advice, and they're like, oh, that's really deep. And I'm like, yeah, that's from that book that those junkies wrote. Fucker. But yeah, I don't know. I'm getting to the point where this program, if you really, like I said, this program is for people who want it, not for people who need it. So, my advice to you, my advice to any newcomers is, number one, get clean for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. There's nothing, until you're doing it for yourself, it's not going to work. I'm sorry to burst that bubble, be Debbie Downer for you, if that's what you're doing it for. I wish somebody would have told me that shit, 7 years ago. I used for 12 years, and a good 7 or 8 of them were because I was trying to get clean for other people. Until you do it for yourself, it's not going to work. And then you got to really want it. But if you want it, you put in like a fraction of the effort you put into getting high. I did a lot of wild shit to get high. You just look, I don't know. It's a simple program. You just got to put the effort in, and it'll do amazing things for you. But like I said, I'm really grateful to be here, and I love all you guys. I hope somebody has told you that today, but if not, I love all you guys. I'm grateful to be here. I'll keep coming back.